Good day. I'm Barry Silverberg, Director of the Center for Nonprofit Studies at Austin Community College, and this is Civil Society, a periodic podcast to provoke more thinking about issues affecting nonprofit effectiveness and success. My guest today is Jesse Richardson, an internationally award-winning creative director, strategist, and art director for over 20 years. He's the creator of 3 of Australia's most successful viral campaigns, and now he's focusing on promoting critical thinking with free Creative Commons resources. He's the founder and president of the School of Thought, on which I'm honored to serve as secretary and treasurer. More than perhaps any other time in our human history, we are bombarded by fake news. So Jesse, in your TED Talk in Brisbane, you focused on the fact that we need to stop teaching kids what to think, but teach them how to think. Mm-hmm. What do you mean by that?
So essentially, I think the school system, both in Australia and in the States and elsewhere in the world, is very much geared to giving people jobs. It's a vocational exercise for the most part, and it spits people out the other end of it, and hopefully they have the skills to be able to work in an economy, which is a very important thing to be teaching children. Right. However, we now live in the information age, and it's imperative that we learn not just the skills to be able to have a job, but also how to think, how to parse all of this information that we are being bombarded with on a daily basis, and in particular, how to be able to recognize the integrity of information, what information comes from an unbiased source, whether we're being manipulated with certain fallacies or biases, and whether the information that we're being provided with is reputable or worth trusting.
So in essence, we're dealing to some extent with what we talk about here in the States and maybe around the world in terms of fake news.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's an extreme end of it, yeah.
Okay. So what brought you to this? I mean, you're a creative designer, assuming you're successful.
Yes.
3 viral campaigns, whatever that means, and would like you to point those out.
Sure.
So what made you take your time and energy to focus on this?
Well, see, Barry, I got sick of arguing with people on the internet who are wrong about things. And I essentially, it became banging my head against that brick wall, as I'm sure a lot of people have, and family members at Thanksgiving and so forth. You know, it feels very often like, even if you've got a very good argument, even if you're supporting that argument with a lot of very valid claims and premises, that people just aren't willing to change their minds about things. And that's a really big problem, because if people are just essentially reinforcing whatever they already believe, then it really undermines the value of discourse. It undermines the value of the town square, right, in common parlance, that we talk to each other about our ideas. And it's a fundamental aspect of democracy that we exchange those ideas and hold them up for scrutiny. But far too often people aren't willing to change their minds about things. So I wanted to use what we do in the advertising world, which is usually to sell people things that they don't really need, and use those powers for good instead of evil by applying design and the skills of marketing to critical thinking and to education generally.
So in the materials that I've read, obviously, you talk about gamification.
Yes.
What do you mean by that, and how does it apply to this larger goal of getting people to think more responsibly?
So it's gamification is a really powerful tool with which to engage people. So what we normally do in the advertising and marketing industries is we try and find some kind of hook, some kind of way to engage someone to give enough of their attention that they might want to buy a product. But in the case of education, what we really want to do is engage someone enough that they might learn something that is valuable for themselves and for society. So being able to engage someone with a gamified experience is a very good way of not just engaging them once, but engaging them on a long-term basis.
So you really mean playing games?
Or and I mean, it's something like, you know, if you think about something like Kickstarter as a model, that's a form of gamification insofar as that everybody's kind of part of something together, and it feels like we're all building towards a total. And so those mechanisms of games can be applied in different areas to the same psychological effect. And that can be applied to education as well. And instead of just being this didactic process by which, you know, information is disseminated from on high to willing receptacles of knowledge, instead it's a much more engaging process that we actually interact, both literally in terms of online content and psychologically as well.
So before we get into the school of thought and the material that it's producing, I think it would be interesting to know, what were those viral campaigns?
Okay, so...
And by the way, are you still carrying that virus, or can we?
Oh no, it's been eradicated now.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
yeah, we're all good. But yeah, the viral campaigns that we worked on. First one was a viral ad that we did for a clothing company that was called Believe in Destiny, and it was the story of two nudist streaker sausage dog lovers who fell in love with each other on different sides of the world on the internet, and then there was a crowdfunding campaign to get them together because they couldn't afford to relocate. So the way they relocated, the way that they met for the first time was at a soccer match where they streaked nude from either ends of the soccer field into each other's arms in slow motion, and you can imagine the visuals that went along with that. So that was our hook, and that got I think about 8 million views on YouTube as a result of being quite fantastical. So that was one of the first ones, and we also did a political campaign that got quite a lot of traction in Australia. Was the most successful online digital political campaign, and this the Your Logical Fallacy is.com was the third one. And what's kind of instructive about that is I've been working in this industry for about 20 years, and the three campaigns that had the most success were ones that kind of went outside of the usual death by committee situation that we often suffer, and we got to explore things with a little bit more creative freedom, and that made them a lot more engaging and a lot more successful. So that's the model that we're attempting to apply to education as well, not necessarily working within the education system, but producing materials that any teacher, any student in the world can access that are genuinely engaging and interesting.
So your focus is to provide materials that supplement and complement, and to somewhat focus teaching and learning and so forth.
Absolutely. What we aim to do is essentially to provide every teacher and student in the world with free access to learning materials in the areas of critical thinking, philosophy, and rationality, and allow them to be able to access those materials and fit them into their curricula however they choose. So it's kind of like opening it up. It's kind of like open sourcing critical thinking and using design and design-led thinking to be able to do that.
And I know that there's been like millions of viewers. Give me some of those statistics.
Some of the stats. So we launched this whole, I'll give you a kind of just to contextualize, we had this idea to create a fully modular online platform teaching philosophy, critical thinking, creative thinking, but it was like this very big kind of undertaking. So what we did is we created a proof of concept microsite at yourlogicalfallacyis.com. Now what that did is it took 24 of the most common logical fallacies that the media, politicians and advertisers use to manipulate us, and just condensed them down into a really simple single sentence, put some nice graphics around it, and just put it out there into the world and made it all Creative Commons poster downloads. And what happened is that it kind of went really viral really quickly. We've now had, I think, over 8 million unique viewers. It's hit the front page of Reddit several times. It was tweeted by the likes of Stephen Fry and Jimmy Wales and a whole lot of other notable intellectuals. And it's being used in thousands of schools all around the world, all with not a single cent spent on it in terms of marketing. So it kind of proved that the model of what we're doing of trying to use design to in the furtherance of education.
And then you took that poster and you converted them into a deck of cards.
Correct, yes, we did that recently. So we just did a Kickstarter campaign for this deck of cards here, which is a lot of people have been asking for them for a while, and I only recently got around to it. So we had a goal of getting to $5,500 to be able to produce them, and we hit that in the first day of the Kickstarter campaign.
And you exceeded it.
Yeah, it got up to $80,000, which was quite staggering. So there's obviously, I think a lot of teachers and a lot of parents wanted a very useful resource to be able to teach their kids about fallacies and biases and how to spot fake news. So it's obviously a very relevant issue in these days and times.
Yeah, and as I've given them out, people love these. I mean, they love it. So what's your favorite fallacy?
My favorite fallacy, ironically enough, is the fallacy fallacy.
The fallacy fallacy.
Yeah, the fallacy fallacy is an interesting one because it's presuming that because a claim has been poorly argued or someone used a fallacy, that necessarily means that they're wrong about what they're saying. So the really important thing to know about fallacies is that it's within philosophy. I won't get too heady here, Barry, but within philosophy...
You got to remember who you're talking to.
Is that essentially if you have a valid argument it means that something you're saying can be true. But if you have an invalid argument, that means that something you're saying may or may not be true, but it's less likely to be true inductively. So if you're using a fallacy to support an argument, it means that argument's a pretty bad, a pretty weak argument. It's uncogent. Whereas if your argument that you're putting together, an argument is just a whole, like basically some ideas that lead to a conclusion in simple terms. If they're void of fallacies, it means that it has much higher likelihood of being a true statement of fact.
Maybe when I listen to this again, I'll understand that.
Sorry.
No, that was good. That was good. That was good. And what's your favorite bias?
Favorite bias is probably
Chocolate ice cream?
Oh, yes, please.
Okay.
Dunning-Kruger Effect, double scoop, please. The Dunning-Kruger Effect is a really interesting effect in psychology where we see that essentially the more competent somebody is, the less likely they are, hang on, let me get the more you know, the less confident you're likely to be is the simplest iteration of it. So what that means is essentially a lot of people don't know how incompetent they are, and as a result of that, they tend to overestimate their own competency. And as a result, that loudmouth who is speaking very loudly about something that they're clearly ignorant about is suffering the Dunning-Kruger effect because they're not quite knowledgeable enough to understand just how little they know. Whereas on the other side of that continuum, people who are experts in a lot of fields often know just how much they don't know about something because there's just so much knowledge out there. They tend to quite substantially underestimate their own expert knowledge relative to others. So it's a very interesting effect where essentially on both sides there's an overcorrection going on.
So when a school of thought is successful and it's doing all the things that you and others involved in it feel it ought to be doing, what does that world look like?
I suppose the ultimate mission of the School of Thought is to help the next generation to be able to think independently. Ultimate success is having critical thinking and philosophy incorporated into school curricula around the world. And whether that's through our materials or just helping to promote that as an idea, it's not about a branded exercise so much as furthering the cause of teaching children how to think for themselves. That's what's really important, is that the kids that are growing up today need to be able to learn to adapt and to be able to take in so much information and to be able to do that in a way that they actually understand the context of things and be able to appraise it critically so that they're not led down a whole lot of pretty ugly garden paths that are possible, especially with more sophisticated digital tools that allow echo chambers to become much more echoey and allow for the reinforcement of a lot of potentially harmful belief structures that are unquestioned. And there's a lot of value in Enlightenment principles to opening ourselves up to other people's ideas and to examining our own beliefs and others' beliefs and trying to understand where other people are coming from and letting reason be a light.
And what kind of, in terms, so these tools are primarily for youth, although they certainly have value for adults.
Absolutely, yeah.
So one of the gamification pieces here is a drinking game. So I was just wondering whether this is just a way to spread Australian drinking games in the United States.
Essentially, yeah. You've cottoned onto my subversive cultural agenda.
That's what I thought
yeah.
that was the.
Yeah.
So I mean, obviously that's focused on adults.
Yes. So
You're not suggesting kids in kindergarten start drinking.
Well, they can start drinking red cordial if they like, and get a little bit.
We have a little cultural difference there, but yeah.
Potentially, yeah. But I think that the gamification aspect of it is that essentially you can call out news, fake news wherever you see it with these cards as well. So there's a lot of different ways to do that, spotting fallacies within the news, and there's game cards within the card deck that lay out a few different ways that you can interact in that way to make it interactive as a learning tool. But yeah, there's the drinking game has a G-rated version where you just collect points as well.
I see. I didn't read that far. So would it be accurate to say that the focus here is to try to embed in kids or give kids the opportunity to learn how to be critical thinkers and sort of like approach life with that kind of perspective?
Yeah, and this is the thing, is that learning critical thinking skills applies to every aspect of our lives, from
Absolutely.
our health to our education, to our vocation, our social relationships, everything. It touches every aspect, because really when you think about it, learning how to think is such a fundamental aspect, and it's this astounding
We don't spend any
situation.
time on it.
We don't, in school, we learn all of these different things like math and English and science, and they're all extremely important things for us to learn.
Yeah.
But really learning how to think in the first place underpins all of those things. And I think that a really important aspect of that as well is that when you learn how to think independently, it makes learning so much more enjoyable. It lights a flame of curiosity that therefore has multiplication effects in terms of academic performance elsewhere. And there's actually been some really interesting evidence that's come out of the United Kingdom recently, teaching kids philosophy. So there's a program called Philosophy for Kids, and they did this quite wide-ranging study where they taught kids philosophy in some of the classrooms and not in others. And what they saw was that there was a really significant, up to 20-30% increase in academic achievement for those kids that had been taught philosophy versus those who had not. And it was especially significant amongst underprivileged children. So they saw the most substantial gains in academic performance. So to your earlier point, there's really just these, there's the application of critical thinking skills and reason is extremely broad and can affect all areas of not just academia but our lives.
And adults also.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Well, what would you like to say to our booming audience out there? What that I may not have asked you that you'd like to share with?
Well, I suppose that I think it's incumbent upon all of us as members of a society to challenge the idea that we shouldn't challenge ideas. That we should all call out things that we believe to be wrong and have an open and honest conversation about them, not antagonistically, not in a way that creates division and polarization, but in the spirit of reason and in the spirit of exchanging ideas as citizens within a democracy. I think that's really important, and that's really what these tools aim to do, is to open us up, to open our minds up to each other and to reason itself.
So if I was a viewer, how would I access these tools?
Okay, so you can go to schoolofthought.org. Is a good repository, and you can also visit either of the two websites, one on logical fallacies and one on biases, and they've got two simple domains that are Icelandic. So there's yourfallacy.is, and yourbias.is. And the reason that they have those domains is you can use them if you want to call someone out for having a particular fallacy or bias on the internet. So if you see that one uncle of yours who might have some views that are maybe not informed by the most coherent arguments, and you want to call them out, you can just go yourfallacyis.com/strawman or ad hominem or appeal to nature or whatever it might be, as a way of helping to enlighten him and anybody else on his social media feed as to what exactly it is that you know is not quite right about that argument. It can help to put a name to it and to understand just why it's wrong.
So after you've corrected the fallacy, do I go to your fallacy was?
It's not a bad idea for us.
I mean, I think you ought to have something where people, you get a little token or something.
It's a club you can get into.
That's right, that's a club.
Gamification.
So, thank you, Jesse. This
Cheers,
has been
Barry.
fascinating. I want to thank you for being here with us. I want to encourage our viewers to visit our website, nonprofitaustin.org/civil society, to read more about the School of Thought and ways to foster more critical thinking. We'll have a link to schoolofthought.org. And please share your thoughts on today's podcast. This is Barry Silverberg with Civil Society, a Center for Nonprofit Studies podcast in collaboration with ACCTV. Thank you for joining us, and in honor of our Australian guest, good day.